Welcome to Where You're At, a podcast that highlights the work of alumni from the Journalism and Media Studies Department at San Diego State University. I'm Pete Frank Williams. Our goal is to share the success of alums, inspire current students with these stories, and connect students and alums for mentoring. And now, here's your host, Josh Suchon.
Coming up this week on Where You At, we're taking the 8 to the 805, then to the 5. We're going to go through Los Angeles. We're going over the Grapevine. We're going through Central California. Then we're going to take the 205 connector. That'll take us to 580. And that puts us right smack in the middle of the San Francisco Bay Area, where we are going to discuss print newspaper journalism. Yes, print journalism still exists. We're going to discuss syndication, and we will discuss what it's like to write about food, wine, cocktails, travel. Yes, believe it or not, this is a real job. There is a human being on earth who has a job writing about food and wine and travel and cocktail. Her name is Jessica Yadegaran. We were classmates. This is such a thrill to welcome her. Hi, Jess. Welcome to the Where You At podcast.
Hey, Sush. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Jessica did some time working for the San Diego Union Tribune, and then she worked as a features writer in San Luis Obispo. Couple of years working for Seattle Magazine, but I want to dive right into what you're doing right now. You work for the Bay Area News Group, but your stories get syndicated. They're all over California. They're all over the country. About 700,000 circulation for your stories. Make us believe in newspapers and what you do and what these stories do and how this is all comes together.
Gosh, I feel so pumped. Thanks, Josh. You know, we are a digital first organization. So that means that SEO is still a really big deal. And the stories, of course, post on first. And then they reverse publish in print. There's about like 6-day lead time on those stories. So when they post online, typically they'll run in print in our Sunday eat, drink, play section. That's where, we write about all the fun stuff, food, wine, like you said, travel. The play section is about getting people out of their house, away from their computers, actually doing stuff, hiking, biking, whatnot. And then in addition to those, as if that's not enough of a grind, we publish 7 kind of glossy high-end magazines a year with themes like we just published Bookish, which explores the Bay Area literary scene, booksellers, author interviews, things like that. We did Eat, which was one of our most popular magazines, obviously, about the restaurant scene and dining and chefs and stuff. And we have one called Play Ball coming out. We have Kickoff, which obviously has to do with football season. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's all really fun stuff.
Well, this is super exciting because Jessica and I worked at the Daily Aztec together. I was basically leaving as she was coming in, but we've gotten to know each other over the years, stay in touch. I haven't seen you literally in person. I can't remember. So I'm super excited about this. But the other thing that I really hope that students can get out of this is just the idea that you have an idea, there's something you have a passion about, there's something that you want to write about, and how you basically can create your own niche. So give us how you got to this with coming to the Bay Area News Group and saying, I want to write about wine. Give us like how you created this wonderful job for yourself.
Yeah, that it's so true. That's a really good question. It was the Contra Costa Times at the time. It's now called the East Bay Times. Contra Costa County in the East Bay is no small market. I mean, it's a legitimate sized market in the East Bay of San Francisco. And when I arrived, we had a food section, recipes, talked about the dining scene, the restaurant scene, all that stuff. But there was no separate wine coverage. There was no wine section. And meanwhile, you had the Chronicle. They were the first dedicated wine section in the country. And so I kind of thought, well, gosh, if they can do it, so can we. Mm-hmm. So I sort of educated myself on the region. I was going to Napa and Sonoma, poor me, in my free time.
Right.
Speaking of the Chronicle, they do an international wine competition and invited me to be a judge on that. I think that certainly helped bolster my byline. And so before you knew it, I was I took some classes at the CIA, that's the Culinary Institute of America, on my own. So I think if you show the initiative and really are willing to dig into something, you can make it your own. And from there, I started a wine blog at the time when wine blogs were exploding around the country. And, that led to all sorts of opportunities.
I know that one of the things that Temple Northrup, the director of the Journalism and Media Studies School, preaches a lot is about ethics. And I want to get into the ethics involved with you, because I think that, look, when you're writing about these things, food and wine, I'm sure there's a lot of people that just want to give you free stuff and they want coverage that's all positive. And so give us the importance of still giving honest reviews and still making sure that you have, the ethics that are involved when you're doing something that's fun, like wine.
Yeah. And meals too. I mean, restaurant meals and stuff. We don't accept any really free food at all, or bottles of wine. I pay my own way wherever I go. I show up blind. They don't know I'm coming before. I don't think I've ever been recognized anywhere. I've gotten a free dessert here and there, and I just hope it's that the restaurant has really competent service and knows that they goofed somewhere and, want to make sure I come back or whatever. Let's see. And if we're ever going to an event where, let's say it's a media event or a preview event or anything, won't let that skew our judgment. And I've actually been directly, asked by PR agencies, PR people, if, they can exchange a free this or that, a hotel stay or restaurant meal for a review. I mean, they straight up ask me, and I just make sure to say up front that that's I'm not at liberty to do that, and that's not something this organization does. So you just be up front, stick to your guns, and pay your own way.
As a newspaper reporter, we're used to having recorders and notepads or phones that we take our notes on. So when you're being incognito at these different events, do you sneak away to the bathroom to take notes? Are you taking mental notes? Or how is it that you still make sure that you get your notes and just other ideas without making it too obvious that you look like a reporter?
Yeah, totally go to the bathroom. Not beneath doing that. I think in age with so many Yelpers, and we're just such a food obsessed culture these days, that I just bust out my phone like everybody else does. I take pictures of everything. Mm-hmm. So later I can go back, and that kind of jogs my memory. I take notes on my phone too. Sometimes I'll rope my husband and son into doing similar things. My kid's 11 and a half, but he's a shrewd reporter. I will tell you that.
Well, give us more details about your young reporter's shrewdness. What makes him so shrewd?
Oh God, he is brutal when it comes to highly reviewed categories of pizza and donuts. Yeah. He, he'll go through. He'll sit down and he'll go through. Okay, let's do the top 5. Most important things. He'll go like texture, taste, appearance, and smell, and he'll go through every one of his senses. It's pretty funny. He's been doing this for a number of years, and he's a very picky eater, which is so ironic.
Okay. I like it. I like it a lot. The other thing about this industry is that between wildfires and now tons of rain that can lead to flooding, or COVID and the number that did on restaurants, how much do you find that you're not just reviewing the item that they create, but that sometimes there's news stories involved in these industries and how they've been affected by the things happening in our world these days?
Oh yeah. It's so true, Josh. It's really remarkable how your breaking news experience and just good old fashioned reporting and listening comes in handy, because it has changed a lot. And it's not, I'd say probably half the time, it's not about, the way something tasted or looked or the service. It's the restaurateur crying to you on the phone about, the hiring crisis, the changing face of downtown San Francisco, and, how much real estate is just available and how much it's become sort of a ghost town with everybody working from home. I've had so many heart-to-hearts just listening, not really doing anything, but just listening and trying to figure out what the stories are. A lot of what I do these days is try to tell the stories of the underrepresented people within the restaurant industry, whether that's restaurateurs of color, BIPOC chefs, all that kind of stuff. It's an interesting time to be a food reporter because of everything that's going on, inflation as well, those kinds of costs. I remember during right after the pandemic, rent agreements between landlords and restaurateurs was a huge deal. If they could get another tenant to come in and pay twice as much, they would there was some clause in the lease where they could just boot the other restaurant.
Wow. I feel like when you're working on a story, like when you just described that and you're hearing a restaurateur and they're like sobbing when they're on the phone, and you can feel like, the heartache that they're going through, and just sort of like the challenge that poses of being like a quality human and relating to them and helping them, and then also trying to find the most dignified way to report on this story.
Oh, you mean you're not getting too emotionally attached?
Yeah, exactly. But also like, yes, this is heartbreaking stuff. You're both a human and a reporter, and trying to like find that right balancing line.
Yeah, I think we've celebritized, if that's a word, chefs and restaurateurs so much with, just the explosion of the Food Network and other food-centric TV shows and stuff. And at the end of the day, I mean, with the profit margins being what they are, this is just a really tough business. I mean, you have to be kind of crazy to go into the restaurant business, I feel like. So using that time with them to just maybe ask one more question about, why they're doing this, why they keep doing this and stuff. It really gets to the heart of, these are just community gathering places. They get into it because they love serving people. They want to share maybe their culture with the community. So, getting to the heart of that, I feel like if you just listen and then maybe ask that one last question, that'll get you that really awesome quote.
All right, Jess. So we're talking about what you do right now, but let's go back now. Let's rewind 20 years or roughly 20 years or so. And you're either finishing high school or starting college. If someone were to say, hey, Jess, this is what you're going to be doing in 20 years, what would you have thought?
Wow. I think at that time, I thought I was going to be an arts and entertainment reporter, which is kind of how, when I got to the Daily Aztec, my editor, Scott Puckett, put me on, concert reviews. I remember that specifically because SDSU had, and I'm sure still does, get some really major acts coming through. So I did a lot of that kind of reporting. I did a lot of music. I did a lot of film at the time. I don't know what it is today, but the circulation of the Daily Aztec back then was like, a small town in America. I mean, it was probably 35,000 circulation. It was a legitimate daily paper. So covering the arts and entertainment community is kind of what I started doing. And I guess that's what I thought, maybe working at Rolling Stone.
Little did we know how much the world was going to change in terms of, of how media gets disseminated. What advice would you give your former self if you could go back in time? What would you tell yourself about what to do and what not to do and what to focus on or different things like that?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I guess I would tell myself to not be afraid to try something different or to, let's say move out of state if that's necessary. You can always come back. And throughout my career, I've met so many people that, I think when we were coming up in the industry, Josh, there was this taboo against, let's say, like going into marketing or PR. They were just delineated areas of communications and you couldn't really cross. But now I've met so many people that are like, oh yeah, I did this and that for 2 years and then I came back. So you can definitely try different things. It'll make you a more nuanced specialist, I think, in communications. And
it's interesting you say that because I feel like one of the things that I struggle with is just the balancing act of marketing myself, right? We're taught as journalists, we're not the story, don't make yourself the story. But whether it's making sure that you get your story out there or when you're looking for that next job, it becomes uncomfortable. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm bragging too much, but there is a kind of a subtle art of knowing how to market yourself and market your work and market what you're doing to let people know about it and get that word out there.
Oh, absolutely. You're a brand, and I think we forget that sometimes, or we weren't taught that way. back then, but now we're a brand. You should have your own website. There are things, some I can talk about and some I chronicle. International wine judge thing is fine, but there's other competitions and things that I judge for that maybe I'm not supposed to talk about, but they should find a place somewhere on my resume, I feel like.
Yeah.
So you do want to brag about yourself.
What are some other just cherished memories from attending San Diego State, whether it's journalism related or not journalism related? Go down memory lane with us a little bit and just, some of the things that just make you smile.
Yeah, it's just, among the best years of my life. Absolutely. It's such a special place. So many special people. Working at the Daily Aztec every day really gave me structure to my life and week. It was always somewhere I could go to talk to someone, mentors, like you, for example. You kind of lived there for a while. So definitely that. Some of my favorite professors, I remember Joe Schneider, taught me, if your mother tells you she loves you, check it out. And I remember that was like just being an immigrant, child of immigrant parents, that always made me laugh, because it's like, what are you talking about? But, so critical to being a savvy journalist is always ask, more questions, check things out, recheck things out. Gosh, what else? The friendships I made. I mean, you can never trade that. My two best friends that we've been through so much together. To this day, we're meeting for our annual girls' birthday trip. We were all February babies. We're still best friends. We met, I think the second week of freshman year. Aww. They were also communications majors, new media studies, but I did not hold that against them.
Okay. Why'd you pick San Diego State? What was it about Montezuma Mesa that made you want to go there?
Gosh, trying to remember. I know that the fact that they had a journalism department, and being such a newspaper nerd at my high school, I think just knowing that that's what I wanted to do and that they had that was pretty remarkable to me. And I got into their honors program, and I remember being worried that it was such a big school. But as my dad told me back then, he said, you can be a big fish because I got into the honors program and the classes were so nice and small. He said, you can be a big fish in a small pond there, even though it's a big pond in general. But that kept I don't know what it's like now, but that kept my classes down to seriously 30 people a class.
It's interesting you bring that up, because as you said that just triggered my memory of walking into these huge amphitheater classes as a freshman, and just being, oh my goodness, look at all of these people that are in these classes. But then there'd be other classes where there would be, 15 to 20 students who were in there, and just sort of the mix of that. And I also think that even though San Diego State is this huge school and it is this big pond, it's finding the small ponds within the big pond, right? Whether that's working for student government, or whether that's working for KCR, the Daily Aztec, or there's so many other different groups that are on campus, and kind of, taking this big pond and just finding your little, your little spot over there where you can just swing off a rope and hang out and, and get some sun,
Absolutely. For some people, it might be the Greek system. For others, it might be, like you said, an organization or something. But I found that pretty quickly, and I feel really fortunate.
You mentioned some of the professors that had an impact. What would be your advice to current professors now, knowing what you know about how difficult it can be to get jobs for students, especially coming out of the pandemic, and how media shrinks, but then it expands in other ways? Do you have any advice for any of the San Diego State professors listening to this podcast about what they can do to help students?
Gosh, that is such a good question. I guess maybe, I got into a pretty lucrative internship program, and I have a feeling it had a lot to do with my magazine writing professor at the time, who wrote me a really great recommendation and really encouraged me to apply to something like that. It was the American Association of Magazine Editors, ASME, and they put on an internship program in New York City every year for I think it was junior and senior college students to work at 20 to 30 magazines around the city. And Sandra Younger, I'll never forget her. My magazine writing professor recommended me for that internship program. And it did so much for my career. So I would say, having, outside of the classroom, just being a resource to students for letters of recommendation or programs and internships they may not know about outside of San Diego would be pretty amazing.
When it comes to the craft of writing, the art of writing, I don't like to look back on the things that I wrote 20 years ago or 25 years ago, because it does take time. And even now, I'm not involved in writing on a regular basis, but when I do write, sometimes I think, man, what happened to my writing skills?
Really? No way.
I mean, it just kind of comes, I feel like it's really easy to get trapped in writing just cliche stuff when you're not writing like on a daily basis. What is your advice of just how to write, how to stay fresh, how to keep getting better with what you're writing so that you don't end up in the same traps of writing the same type of phrases, the same type of, it can be very easy to make a cookie cutter story. What are some of the things that you do that you can give advice to people about?
That's a really good question. Because I've been doing it every single day for so long, I really do feel that it's a muscle that needs to be, used every day. I mean, aside from, a 2-week vacation here and there, I've just been doing it so long, I haven't stopped. And I know to listen for almost a rhythm in my writing. And I mean, I could tell you some of the little things I do. I mean, varying sentence structure, alliteration, using just, precious, perfect quotes, not using quotes unless you have to, unless they really, really add something to the story. But it's so true. I've making sure you write an active voice. These are a lot of the things I learned from Sandra Younger as well. I don't know if she's still at the university. Gosh, yeah, I guess those are the main points right now. But just use it or lose it. I remember I had a fear that I would somehow forget how to write at points, but that was like 10 or 15 years ago, and it did not happen. So,
what gives you the most pleasure and happiness? What types of stories, or maybe give us a story or two that you've done over the years where you just felt like, this is why I do this. This is what this, this makes me proud that we do what we do.
Oh gosh. I think uncovering something that people don't really know about or think about, or maybe they've thought about it, but they don't know why. Really, whether it's, culturally or just something societal. So I started noticing that when you go into a pizzeria, you don't often see women throwing pies. I mean, think about it. When you're just at your neighborhood pizzeria, or maybe it's a fancy pizza place in Los Angeles or something, do you ever see women? Or even on the Food Network shows, you don't often see, when they do these pizza stories, it's always like these tatted up big guys or, bros or something. And so I started looking into it and finding out that just there's this heavy machismo that still exists in Italian food. And you'll find it in other cultures too, including Japanese cultures. There's a direct parallel with the sushi line. When you're at the sushi counter at a Japanese restaurant, you just never see women making rolls. So I started looking into that, and I ended up doing a big piece on the rise of the pizza iola. It's another word you never hear. It's always pizza aiolo, right? Well, there is a word in Italian for female pizza makers. So that was a really rewarding story. I found, I think 4 or 5 pizza iola in the Bay Area, and they weren't just throwing pies, they were opening their own pizza restaurants. So I kind of traced it back to 1 or 2 mentors in the Bay Area and schools, pizza schools that are really big on teaching and promoting women in Italian food. I was really, really proud of that story. And I'm going to do the sushi one next. So don't steal my idea.
I'm okay. I won't steal your idea. And that's such a great example, because I think that goes to the heart of whether you're writing about politics or baseball or pizza, that it's all about being curious and just thinking, what is it that I'm seeing that I don't normally see, and just looking for something that does make it unique. And that's where the fun for me is finding those things, and just the curiosity. That's the ultimate journalist. Someone's just super curious.
That's so true. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Another one I noticed was Laotian cuisine. So even in the Bay Area, which has such a strong Asian population, you'll always see Vietnamese, Laotian, and Laotian restaurants. And these are actually, I learned, Laotian immigrants that were afraid to cook their own food because they didn't think they didn't think the American palate would be able to handle the nuances and the flavors of food. And because Vietnamese immigrants and Thai immigrants had come here earlier and familiarized Americans with their food, they were too afraid to cook their own food. So I found some Laotian chefs and talked to them about that, and how they're instead of just having a few off the menu Laotian dishes, they're flipping the equation, and they're just offering like one banh mi or one pad thai, and then everything else is this funky, unrefined, amazing Laotian cuisine. So I guess part of that is, living in a large market like the Bay Area, you'll be able to uncover some of these culturally diverse and interesting stories. So I feel fortunate for that. But you're right, it just boils down to curiosity.
Okay, one of the themes that we're trying to do on this podcast is to just spread the word about what other alums are doing. And so we want you to brag about some of our other classmates. So who do you want to brag about? Tell us about something. It can be one, it can be two. Tell us about another San Diego State alum who's doing something in communications that we should know about, that you're proud of.
Oh, sure. I'm going to brag about Ross von Metzke. He's over in West Hollywood. He is the director of communications and head of PR for the It Gets Better project, which is an international organization and nonprofit that seeks to elevate and support gay, lesbian, transsexual, and queer youth around the world, whether it's through advocacy work or events. So Ross, who I hired at the Daily Aztec, he was one of my writers, and then he became an assistant editor. I helped get him an internship through the same internship program. I ended up at Time Magazine. Ross was at, I think he was at a women's magazine, one of the teen magazines. I can't remember. But he went on to be the first web editor for Advocate for that publication. And then he went to the It Gets Better project. So he's doing some incredible stuff over there.
Oh, way to go, Jess.
Yeah,
I
way
like
to go,
that
Josh.
Well, I want to brag about someone who you and I worked with at the Daily Aztec, and he was not a journalism and media studies major. He was an English major. His name is Will Bell. He worked with us at the Daily Aztec. And actually, when he departed San Diego State, he became a police officer. He was a cop in Los Angeles, and then he got hurt on the line of duty. And so he wrote this book called LA Rex, which was sensational. If you know Will, then you're reading the book going, oh, that's, of course, Will. Of course, Will has tigers in front of this house that's protecting this person's house. And then writing that book led to him writing the TV show Castle, which was very entertaining and successful. And then he starts writing movies. I remember he wrote Gangster Squad. And then I'll never forget, I'm in the movie theater and I'm getting ready to watch Aquaman. And I see on the screen, written by Will Bell. And I just started yelling. People in the movie theater were looking at me like I was a crazy person. And I went, oh my gosh. That? Yes, Will Bell wrote the #1 movie in America. He wrote Aquaman.
Stop it. I know about all the other ones, but not that. That's huge. I'm going to tell my kid. He's going to be so impressed.
Yes, he's written Justice League, and he's heavily involved in his IMDb is just ridiculous now. And I'm just so proud that I knew him back then. And he still usually responds to my text messages and emails. And we're going to have to get, and we're going to have to get Will on at some point for this podcast, even though he was not a JMS major. But again, it just goes to show, I think Will's a great example of someone who, he was a guy who just was always reading a book. I remember that about Will in college. He was always reading a book, and he wrote City, and he was managing editor, and then he becomes a cop, and then he writes TV shows, and then he writes the #1 movie in America. You just never know.
Do you know if he became a cop because he knew he wanted to write those kinds of TV shows and movies, or he just kind of went into law enforcement.
Well, that's all the more reason I need to get Will on this podcast so we can find out exactly the answer to that. I'm going to say that he just wanted to be a cop, but maybe it was in the back of his mind. I mean, he always read so many books and he was so into different movies and TV shows that involve cops that maybe it was there. We'll have to find out.
I'm going to plug right there for being having English as your minor, because I did, and I think it helped my writing.
Okay. Tell me more about that. And then we're going to wrap this up, but tell me more about how being an English minor helped your writing and how that can help others.
I think it might be, if you plan to write something besides just straight news, I think it adds some dynamics and depth to your work, and just makes you read so much, like you said about Will. I mean, I took classes like, the Bible as literature, and then like a women's literature class. And I think the kinds of books that they make you read, I wanted to read some, but I think the amount of literature that you have to consume as either an English major or an English minor only makes you that much better of a writer.
Yeah. All right. That's a really good way to end it. I like that. All right, Jess, thank you for your time and your friendship over the years, and tell us about your story. If people want to find out more and read your work, where should they go in order to read your work?
They can just go to www.mercurynews.com and just click on the food section, or they could do Mercury News / Jessica Yadegaran, and all the good stuff should come up. And all the good stuff. There's not too many Jessica Yadegarans, and so it's really easy when you type her name into Google to find her work. All right, Jess. Once again, thank you so much. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. Once again, that is Jessica Yadegaran. I'm your host, Josh Suchon. This is the Where You At podcast, San Diego State's journalism and media studies podcast. Hope you enjoy this. If you want to get involved in the department, please do so. You can mentor, you can speak by Zoom, you can speak to a classroom, get in touch with me, get in touch with Temple Northrop. We would love to have more and more alums who are getting involved in the department with professors, with students, and helping make an impact so that we can share some of these stories. Once again, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Where You At podcast. This is Amber Frankusen from the class of 2009 and founder CEO of AF Marketing. Thanks to Martine Marin for creating the music you're hearing right now, and to Alex Piscatelli for work on the podcast name and the artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums of the Journalism and Media Studies Department, we really want to know where you at. Tell us about your career. Get involved in the department. You can donate your time or your money. You can mentor. You can speak to classrooms in person or over Zoom. You can provide internship opportunities to students, but really we need your help in growing this department. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to the podcast, tell your friends, recommend us a future guest, and go Aztecs.